You are listening to the Cattle Call Podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call Podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim Coppinger, your fun host, and with me, as always, is my partner,
the handsome host, Rocco.
The handsome host, the delusional host, but we'll let him have it for today. But he's trying to be nice and funny because he thinks it's going to get him out of the engineering joke of the week, but it's not going to happen. You still have to suffer through, Rocco. Those are the rules. All right, you ready? Here we go. So here's the important thing. Here we go. So before I started working at an engineering firm, if someone asked me what is 1 + 1, I always said 2. So now I've been working at engineering firms for over 30 years now, and the answer I give them is I'm sure that 1 + 1 is, I'm pretty sure it's still 2, but we better make it 3 just to be safe. See, engineers like that joke. They get it. It's a terrible joke. They're all terrible. All right, so we have a first-time guest on the show today, Andrew Milford, who is the Senior Product Manager for Civil Infrastructure at Autodesk, is here with us. So, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you say that now. We'll see if you feel the same when we're done. So... No, we always appreciate when you guys take the time. We know how busy you guys at Autodesk are. So, all right, folks. So Andrew is here today to talk with us about the concept of Collaborate for Civil 3D, or C4C3D, as you may have heard it called. And in particular, we want to talk to Andrew about how the tools and features behind this process have been updated in the brand new 2024 release of the Civil Infrastructure Toolsets. So, Andrew, before we get started, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your job over there at Autodesk and what you do and how'd you end up there?
Yeah, rightio. Thanks, Jim. So my background, I'm a civil infrastructure PM here at Autodesk. I focus primarily on roads and highways and our digital project delivery strategies. I work a lot with the product teams, so with Tim and Ramesh, who you've had on this show here before. I also work with our customers and with our strategy and marketing teams to really help shape the direction of all of our infrastructure products. I've actually been with Autodesk for about 9 years this week. But originally, I'm born and bred in Australia. My background is I've spent roughly 25 years in industry as a roads and highways engineer. I used to specialize in a lot of the large infrastructure projects. So I really, really love that engineering process, almost as much as the products used to design them. Nice. And I was always looking for ways to automate those processes. So when the opportunity arose, I joined the product team in 2020, which required me to move across to the US, which happened to be right in the middle of when COVID hit. So I was stuck in Australia for 12 months for my first year as a product manager. But when the borders reopened, we packed up the family and moved to New Hampshire.
Nice. Yeah, they weren't letting folks in and out of there for a while, that's for sure. Had everybody on lockdown. What I'm amazed with is that you work with Tim and Ramesh, and they still let you come on this show? That dude, they owe you lunch for not warning you.
Well, they did warn me, but I'm a glutton for punishment.
Okay, fair enough. That's good. You'll fit right in here then. We're all good. Okay. All right. So let's kind of get into the collaborate conversation here, right? For a lot of years, collaboration was pretty heavily restricted to kind of the architectural side of the house, right? And the focus seemed to be on developing ways to integrate those architectural designs with the construction world. That's where it was all living. And for those of us in the civil infrastructure space, we were kind of left out in the cold there for a while, right? The civil 3D workflow process was independent from all the other aspects of the design, and our design output was kind of blended back in almost as an afterthought. For a very long time, right? There was no direct collaboration, I guess, between design files and data and the most that we could hope for in the civil space was some manual adjustments, right, to help us align some obvious issues before we got to putting shovels in the ground. But luckily, Autodesk has been working hard at that over the last couple of years here with their C4, C3D concept. So Andrew, why don't you start us off here saying, what exactly is Collaborate for Civil 3D, and what can our listeners do with it?
All right, yeah. And yeah, I agree with you. We have been a little late to the party in relative to our vertical counterparts. But as a quick overview, Collaboration for Civil 3D, it's a part of what we're calling the BIM Collaborate Pro package, which is built on the Autodesk Construction Cloud platform. And this platform itself it's a unified platform that hosts a whole suite of products that cover everything from design through to construction. And these tools include things like Autodesk Docs, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later, BIM Collaborate and BIM Collaborate Pro, model coordination tools, build and takeoff. But central to all of this is that data platform of which I mentioned before, which is Autodesk Docs. I'm just going to refer to it as Docs. It's too many syllables. This is where you can do things like you can handle all your project setups, you can handle your administration and your document management tools, and most importantly, it's the repository where you can store and centralize all of your Civil 3D documents, XREFs, and data shortcuts. Docs itself also includes a drawing viewer, and these views are automatically generated when you publish those drawings into Docs. And one of the bonuses is they're actually updated and versioned automatically as you're saving your drawing files. So it's doing a lot of that management in the back end. Yeah. The Docs viewer itself supports like 85 different file formats, including all your Microsoft Office.
Yeah, which is nice. It means you can put pretty much everything you need out there into one location and have it handle, like I said, a lot of that heavy lifting in terms of management and naming and revisions and backup copies and all the other stuff. So yeah, it's a great setup.
Absolutely, yeah. And when you purchase an entitlement to BIM Collaborate Pro, so in addition to Collaboration for Civil, you're also getting access to Collaboration for Revit and Plant 3D and the model coordination and clash tools. So it's a pretty sweet bundle that's going on there.
Yeah. Now I love that Autodesk is working towards centralizing everything into a one clearinghouse where everybody kind of works out of the same pool and puts the data all in one repository. I love that concept that you're moving towards. All right, so I think the key to working with a set of collaboration tools, right, is first making sure that you actually have access to all of the necessary components, and then making sure that they're all capable of talking to each other. Right now, there's not much point in having systems that can talk to each other if you don't actually have those systems. Right, makes sense. So what we're looking to do with the Collaborate system, right, is keep your civil data available to all the stakeholders, right? So that they're getting near to real-time data and updates across all aspects of the job, right? And that means we need ways of connecting, right, to taking tools like Civil 3D and AutoCAD and all of the construction cloud tools that Andrew was talking about, tying them all together and having them be able to effectively communicate. So Andrew, let me ask you this, right? First of all, who has access to C4, C3D, and once they have that entitlement, what will they need to get it all working together?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are actually several components required to really get the most out of the C4, C3D workflows. The first was, as I mentioned before, access to Autodesk Docs, and that is actually available to anyone as part of the AEC collection. We mentioned above the Collaboration for Civil 3D module, which itself is part of the BIM Collaborate Pro. Obviously, you need to have a compatible version of Civil 3D, and the collaboration work really starts as far back as 2020.2. So as long as you've got 2020.2 and any newer versions, you should be pretty much good to go. We do recommend using the latest version, but we'll talk a little bit about that a bit down the line. But lastly, and most importantly, you need the desktop connector. So for those that don't know what that is, it's a desktop service. It's a free tool you can download, but what it does is it connects Windows Explorer with Autodesk Docs. So when you install the connector, it actually mounts a new drive that automatically handles all of that syncing and locking of data between your local drive and Docs. So you can kind of think of Desktop Connector as the brains behind the whole process. It handles all the syncing of the data shortcuts and XREFs. So say I begin a drawing in Docs, that drawing is locked in Docs and that sync process begins. And what happens is we're syncing only the data you need to your local drive. And the advantage is that, files are actually automatically deleted from your local drive after about 15 days of inactivity. So that does reduce the impact on your local drive. And most importantly, any references that aren't loaded inside your drawing at that time, or any references that aren't needed, are actually not synced. So it's much more performant than previous versions.
Nice.
And once that, it's pretty sweet. And once that data has been downloaded, it actually stays synced to your local drive. So it's much more performant with regards to opening, because everything is local. It's actually comparable to working on a local drive. So you'll probably find once you sync the data down, it's faster than working on a network drive.
Yeah, that's great. And for those of you who haven't used it before, it's very much, just to draw a comparison, it's like working with, SharePoint or OneDrive, synchronization in Microsoft on the back end, where, as far as you know, you're just working on your local machine, and all of the uploading and downloading to the central server with Autodesk Docs and everything is all handled for you. It's a really, really well designed system. So I like that. Yep. So all right, so
yep. Oh, I'll just add a few more points there. We just back in November released what we call Desktop Connector 16, which superseded the old 15 series, and this was a huge leap forward because we can now handle much more complex projects than before. We're getting much better performance with the syncing. We've got quicker folder navigation through the Windows File Explorer. One of the most important things was we're automatically locking files now based on the application. So any files that are locked in Docs are made at the application level. And even if you've got something synced locally, those locks will actually appear on your locally cached files. And again, from the performance perspective, if we look at some of the improvements that we've made in this new Desktop Connector 16, we have some customer sample files. I think it's like a 500 megabyte file with 100 megabyte MMS. And once that file has been locally cached, we've improved the opening time of that drawing from 6 minutes down to less than 30 seconds.
Wow, that's a heck of a jump.
So we've made some really good technical advancements in this new version of the Desktop Connector. And we think this is really just the start. We're still looking at ways to improve the performance even more. It's kind of one of our key focus areas as we move forward. Because let's face it, some of these Civil 3D files can be pretty big.
Oh yeah, they get huge, particularly once you start playing with point cloud data. They jump real fast. So all right,
absolutely.
Yeah. So Rocco, let's wake you up over there. So collaboration, I think, is always it's a big thing with our construction clients. They're always looking to deal with that. But have you been speaking to or working with people in the civil space who are really looking, or expressing an interest into the Collaborate for Civil 3D concept?
Yeah, it's definitely a topic of interest, and if you think about how dispersed teams are nowadays, even now that the situation again with COVID is better, the ability to be able to share documents in this way is huge. And so I see this taking Civil 3D to a whole new level. So it's big. I don't see a lot of small firms initially, taking advantage of it. They're a little bit more behind, but your medium to large size firms for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing but benefit here. There's no negatives to working in this type of an environment. So Andrew, let me ask you this: right? How do people get started using the Collaborate for Civil 3D? Right? Do they need to start with like brand new projects only, or can they tie back to their existing jobs that they're working on today and get that integrated into the process?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that can be approached. So short answer is no, you don't need to start with a new project. However, we do recommend starting new projects in Docs. It's probably just easier to just kickstart a brand new project in that environment. However, if you really want to migrate an existing project, and we're seeing a lot of customers starting to do this, there are several ways to get that data into the cloud. The first is around a new tool that's currently in beta called the Drawing Migration Tool for Docs. And this is really about migrating all of your Civil 3D projects and all of your references. It's a 4-step process, basically. You select your local data location and your target location. You specify the types you want to exclude from that, because you might not want to take all of the junk that comes along that accrues over time in your projects. Then we do a data integrity check across all of that information. So we look for things like all the circular references, the missing references, all the related data stuff. Say you've got Surface XML files, long file names, data shortcut pathing, reference checking, all of those things that could potentially break once you're inside of the system. Then once that's done, you hit the go button and you review the uploading process. And then lastly, it just spits you out a summary of what went up there.
Nice. Simple process.
Yeah. So that's the separate migration tool. Again, still in beta. It's just been updated to work with the latest Desktop Connector 16. But the Desktop Connector itself actually has two methods now of uploading a project to docs. The first is a direct uploader, straight through the Windows Explorer window. So it doesn't do any checking or uploading of references. It's just a straight upload of that single file into docs. Short, sweet, done. The second is a command inside of the Desktop Connector called uploading files and references. And this will let you upload design files and view all of the associated references and the related data before uploading the cloud. And you can upload things like individual folders, multiple folders, single files, files and folders, whatever combination you like, you can upload the whole lot in one go.
Nice. So, okay. All right. So, Of course, right, with the new 2024 system just dropping, right, and all kinds of recent updates like you were talking about to all the collaboration and construction cloud systems. The thing that everybody listening is wondering is, what new features and functions come along with all of those updates. You got a lot of guys listening who are tech geeks like myself, particularly in the civil space, who look forward to this time of year so we can start playing with all the new toys and planning out what we're going to do and develop for our workflows over the next year. So what do you think, Andy? What are the cool new features that are incorporated into Civil 3D 2024 and related products that are going to help improve this collaboration process?
Yeah, a lot of the changes from the Civil 3D side around the collaboration workflow, a lot of them really occurred under the hood. The development team spent a lot of time really enhancing that syncing process, making it more reliable and consistent, really drilling in and focusing on performance. And I know that's a subject you've heard Tim talk about a lot from the core Civil 3D functionality. Mm-hmm. But I guess the biggest benefit you're going to see is really around the sheet set manager, which we originally introduced in 2023.1, where we introduced a new cloud-based sheet set manager. This is something that's predominantly used in the US, but it's used to sort of organize all of your sheets into logical drawing packages. But what we found was the legacy desktop sheet set manager didn't really work well in our initial collaboration for civil efforts, so it didn't work well in the cloud essentially. So what happened was the AutoCAD team went back and they actually rebuilt the entire tool from scratch with a cloud first mindset. So what they're doing is they're leveraging Forge Design Automation and the Microsoft Fluid framework. And what this does, instead of having to, it really just allows that co-editing of the sheet set manager in a cloud-based environment. But from a user's perspective, you can just jump in there at any time, start editing away. You can create your cloud sheet sets. You can do all of the old stuff you could do on the desktop. You can rename, renumber. We did introduce a new feature based around auto numbering of sheets.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
You can.
I hadn't seen that. That's real nice.
Yeah, you can actually move your subsets around, renum the auto numbering, and just renumbers them all from top to bottom. It's a pretty cool feature. But then we've added additional support now in the 2024 version. We can now manage our support files. We can host those all in the cloud. Much more reliability about importing sheets. And most importantly, you can publish all of your sheets to PDF through Forge Design Automation with no impact on your local machine. All that load is taken off and done through the Forge Design Automation APIs.
That's really nice. That is a huge system saver. Especially you're dealing with larger projects with thousands of sheets. Ooh, man, can that take forever to print out? So yeah, offloading that is a brilliant setup. I like that.
It does. And I guess the other really cool thing about it is because it's a web-based application, you don't need to install it. So from the user's end, it just updates. So whenever we update the code or add a new feature or fix something, you automatically just get that pushed through to your machine. It just happens. So everyone who's using the web sheet set manager is getting the same version. So that is available from 2023.1 onwards. You can still use the legacy desktop sheet set manager in the cloud if you're using a version prior to that, but it's still dependent on the old lock-unlock mechanisms, and it doesn't really provide that advanced co-authoring that we've introduced with the Microsoft Fluid framework.
Nice. Okay, good deals. All right, so let's take a quick break to let today's sponsor get a word in. And when we come back, we'll talk more with Andrew about the benefits of collaboration for Civil 3D. So stand by, folks. We'll be back in just 1 minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's episode of the Cattle Call Podcast is brought to you by ZenTech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. We're bringing ourselves to you. Aren't we nice? So we wanted to talk to you guys today about some of the things that we offer at ZenTech Consultants. In particular, we wanted to talk to you today about our offerings around developing and upgrading your CAD standards. We are here to help you guys with all of your CAD standard needs, from ongoing drafting and design support to block and library development, full CAD standards development, right? CAD version upgrades, really whatever it is that you guys need when it comes to developing, implementing, and tweaking your current CAD standards. Or like I said, if you don't have any yet, we can help you build them from scratch. So Rocco, why don't you tell all the good folks how they can reach out to us and start that conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of information, people, on our website, zentechconsultants.net. That's ZENTEK consultants.net. Or you can give us a call, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
Ooh, nice. CAD standards from ZenTech Consultants. You're listening to the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. We're talking with Andrew Milford of Autodesk about the general benefits and the best new features available for the Collaborate for Civil 3D process. As Autodesk is in the middle of rolling out their new 2024 platform. And I want to jump back into this conversation by talking a bit about some of the processes that tie into the collaboration concept, but that people don't always necessarily think of from the civil infrastructure side of the house. We've been siloed on our own for so long, right, that those of us in the civil world don't always consider the possibilities of what we can accomplish with this type of cloud-based collaboration. So, Andrew, what do you think are the key benefits that civil and survey firms are going to see once they kind of get working in the cloud and using these C4, C3D processes?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, when you subscribe to the BIM Collaborate Pro, and once your projects are moved into the cloud, you're actually getting access to a whole bunch of new functionality within the Autodesk Construction Cloud that just comes along for the ride. I guess the most important part is really just having that centralized source of data. So you collaborate with your project teams, and that can be people either inside of your org or outside of your firewall, and you can manage all of that Civil 3D design data, in a secure environment and really in real time, because there's none of that server replication that goes on with local products. It also lets you do things like access your design files, your data shortcuts, and all your XREFs from multiple locations anywhere at any time. And it really can help reduce the cost of IT hardware in your office. And so just some of the other benefits that I mentioned before that BIM Collaborate Pro offers, you get this whole suite of these model coordination tools where you can set up model views to review inside that Autodesk viewer, which also enables you to do things like automatic clash detection. So you can set up a folder full of DWG files essentially, and you can review all of these potential conflicts. Say you've got your corridor model or your corridor solid model, you can go and clash that up against, say, a lighting model or any of your utility models, and you can clash drawing against drawings, and it produces this really nice matrix. It's really easy to use and really, just really helpful in those workflows to avoid the costly rework of finding clashes, either in the manual review processes or even worse, out on site.
Yeah.
And then once you find those clashes, you can go and assign issues to those. You can review and assign them to the engineer record. And so all of the CAD files, images, and sheet files can be referenced and attached to those issues, and they can be tracked throughout the life cycle. So the engineer can then change the design, re-upload the drawing, and compare the changes against previous versions to ensure that they've been made and updated. And then you've got things like drawing markup tools and review tools, and this is done directly inside the Docs environment. And so because the drawing views or the derivatives themselves are automatically created, anyone with access to the project can go into a set of drawings and start to do things like markups. And lastly, you've got the multidiscipline design coordination, where you can, if you're working across disciplines, you can manage your civil, your building design, any multidiscipline design data using these project-based workflows in one single environment.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I think it's great that you point out one of the things, we do a lot of consulting work around collaboration across a whole array of different systems and programs. But I do love one of the things that Autodesk has incorporated here is that they didn't ignore the communication portion, right? One of the failings, I think, where people hit up against collaboration when they're trying to do it is they still try to communicate via email and phone calls and, things are, oh, here's a link on my server, and having all of this in one location and being able to tie all of the communication and bring things to people's notice and have them reply back. And why did we do that? And how did this change? And what's the reason for this? And having that all handled right inside the collaboration environment where there's a permanent long-term record and everybody goes to the same spot, to get those answers in communication. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I love that. So just throw my 2 cents in there. So, all right. So look, folks, it's all well and good. I guess, to talk about the latest and the greatest tools. And like I said before, right, geeks like me, we love this stuff, right? But the reality is that a lot of people out there don't like to live on the bleeding edge of technology, right? There are a lot of firms out there that can be, very conservative and methodical in their upgrade processes, tending to work a release or two behind the latest and greatest. And they let other people, knuckleheads like me, deal with any potential issues that may come up. And I think that's particularly true for survey and civil engineering people, right? Who are kind of all firm believers in the, if it ain't don't concept of design. So, Andrew, with that in mind, what versions of Civil 3D and Desktop Connector will give listeners access to all this functionality we're talking about today?
Yeah, and that's something we come across a lot. We can't expect customers to upgrade every single year. It gets tricky. There are a lot of dependencies, and people have got custom routines. So if you look back, you can definitely use older Desktop Connector and Civil 3D versions. You can use Desktop Connector 15.8 with Civil 3D back as far as the 2020.2 release, which I think I mentioned before. It's worth noting, though, we don't really recommend this as an option because you're really missing out on all of the new improvements. So if you want that real optimal experience, and I'm talking about things like the smart syncing, being able to sync only what you need, the faster locking performance, the web sheet set manager stuff, you really want to be looking at, as a baseline, Civil 3D 2023.1 with the Desktop Connector 16.2 and above. And this will offer a much more streamlined and enjoyable experience. Okay. Again, the older versions will work, but definitely not as optimized as the newer versions.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I agree with Andrew in his thing, right? It's one thing to hold when you're just upgrading a tool that you guys have been using for 10 years. Really talking about a newer concept with completely, revamped and reworked, workflows here. Working on the old one, probably not going to get the best results that you guys are really hoping for. So moving up to the new one is better.
Yeah, and we're in the process. We're releasing the Desktop Connector pretty much every month nowadays. So that is a big ask, but the changes are coming so fast, and we're making a ton of fixes to the products. We're adding new functionality. Actually, I should point out that yesterday, the Desktop Connector 16.2 was released, and that included a ton of new features and fixes. Things like the biggest change, I guess, was around the installation and deployment. We've really helped make it easier so you can install at scale across your organization, and just helping that upgrade process from 15.8 to 16. We're handling a lot of that cleanup as part of the installation process because it was such a major shift going between these two versions. There are also a lot of bug fixes in the syncing behavior, things where files remain locked after renaming the file or syncing, really just starting to tidy up those edge cases and, make it a much more reliable experience. The big thing about 16.2, though, is the ability to change the workspace. Now, this was available in 15.8, but this feature has been added back into this release. And what this does is it gives you the ability to change the location of the workspace to another fixed drive location. So you're no longer locked to your user profile on C drive. So that was a really big feature that's been requested.
Nice.
And just small things, just like tidying up messaging around, long paths, better handling of temp and back files, just those little things that make it a whole lot better. And we're still going to be continuing to make changes and improvements to this as we move into the future.
Nice. Okay. So Rocco, what's your standpoint on this, going from dealing with the survey and civil clients? Do you find that a lot of them are still kind of lagging behind on their release of Autodesk products, right? Or do you find that most everybody with the annual licenses now are kind of mostly working up to date?
On the survey end in particular, they're behind, but I think there've been a lot of improvements. I mean, to Civil 3D alone over the past two releases. And for those who listen to us, check out some of the other podcasts that we've done even over the past 6 months, and you'll hear that there's a lot of changes. So it's worth making the change, and if you're paying for the AEC collection, you're paying for the AEC collection.
Yeah,
so you might as well
use it.
Get yourself current, and start to utilize some of these great tools, because it means productivity gains. I know it's not so easy for smaller firms to be current. You're always kind of behind the eight ball with the workload and limited staff, but the improvements in the technology could certainly help to improve your productivity pretty significantly.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so one of the great things about getting cool Autodesk guests like Andrew on the podcast is that it gives us a chance to kind of get a little bit of a sneak peek into what other tools and features may be coming down the road for us. And I do realize, Andrew, there's only so much that you can share. But I usually manage to wheedle at least a general direction of development and goal out of our guests here. So I got you a kind of captive audience here on the show. So what about it, sir? What's on the roadmap ahead for future updates to the Collaborate for Civil 3D world?
Yeah, that's So I guess the first and most important thing is, we are continuing to invest heavily in the desktop connector and collaboration for Civil 3D workflows. We're going to keep enhancing the desktop connector version 16 to really add more feature parity with the 15.8 version. That includes a lot of things like, if we look at the desktop connector through the Windows Explorer, just reinstating all of those right-click commands, like being able to access the Autodesk Docs web page from the Explorer windows, be able to lock and unlock files directly inside the Windows Explorer window, and even be able to do things like show who's locked the file inside those windows. So we're going to continue to refine and improve that syncing and locking process and just make it more reliable and resilient. We want the customers to really love the workflow and just go out there and say, hey, this works great, it's fast, it's performant, it's doing what I want it to do. But now that we've got our Civil 3D projects in the cloud, the question comes down to, what about the rest of your data? And we're referring specifically around, or we're starting to sort of research into the concept of, managing project content. So once you've got your drawings in there, what about all your title blocks? And what about all your Civil 3D content? What about your pipe catalogs, your sub-assemblies, your pay item files? We want users to be able to leverage Doc as that central repository for all of your content. Your Civil 3D content and AutoCAD content for that matter. And then there are other things, as we look at collaboration for Civil, we want to really make sure that the data, the Civil 3D drawings you're setting up there are in good shape, making sure the references are all set to relative paths as opposed to absolutes. That's pretty much essential for a good collaborative workflow. Making sure your drawing is purged of all of your reg apps, avoiding all your circular referencing. So, looking at, how do we make drawings more robust and not as bloated as we push them into the cloud. And then there's also the support for the additional workflows. For example, we could say, how do we take our survey workflows into the cloud? And that means, the survey database, the equipment, the figure prefix databases, the line work code sets. And most importantly, as we do this, we really need to open up Autodesk Docs to be able to support more of the file formats that we're used to, things like our HTML files and our configuration files.
Nice. That's not a small task you got ahead of you there, that's for sure.
Not small at all.
No. So, all right. So, as listeners of the show know, whenever I have a guest on, I like to give them kind of the last word on the show and tell us something about what they came here to talk about that I wasn't bright enough to know I should ask about. So Andrew, what else do you think that people should know about collaboration for Civil 3D, or just general collaboration with Autodesk tools? That we didn't cover in any of my questions.
We actually covered a lot of the functionality and a lot of the capabilities. But what we're really excited about this new release. I think the most important thing to take away is we've really been listening to your comments and feedback. As a result of all of the feedback from earlier releases, we've seen the Desktop Connector 16. This was a complete rewrite, and it's just vastly superior to the previous 15.8. We've rebuilt the Sheet Set Manager from the ground up with a cloud-first mindset using brand new web technology. We've improved the Civil 3D syncing technology so that it's just so much more intelligent, and it's only downloading what you need, ignoring those unloaded references. What I didn't mention was, if you really want to try the BIM Collaborate Pro tool, you can actually go to the website. Just Google BIM Collaborate Pro. It'll probably be one of the top 2 hits, and you can actually download it and give it a spin for 30 days, I believe. And lastly, I think I haven't brought this up before, but if you want to look at some of the latest developments around collaboration for civil, you should also check out our new public roadmap. And I think Tim may have mentioned this in the last.
Tim mentions it on every time he's on.
Does
that's
he?
Good. Yes, he does. It's always good. I'm going
to sound like a broken record in that case. Just hit the Infrastructure Reimagined blog, and there's all sorts of materials there around our roadmap. Again, this new. We've kind of moved away from the Trello board and moved into product board, a new front end. It just gives you a few more capabilities around being able to rank things on what's important to you. Choosing whether something isn't important, is it a nice to have, is it important, or is it critical? And most importantly, you can add comments to the cards. And all of this information gets fed into our systems. So I recommend checking that out, because we actually use those comments and those rankings. We use those heavily as a focus for our resources as we look to future roadmap planning.
That's perfect. All right, so I think with that we can call it a day here, and we'll let Andrew get back to driving the Autodesk bus back towards newer and cooler collaboration tools to make all of our lives easier. But I do want to take a minute here and just thank you again one more time, Andrew, for being on the show. And we hope that you're silly enough to be willing to come back again soon. We really appreciate your being here, my friend.
Love to come back on. Thanks so much for having me.
All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, folks, we're going to bounce out of here, but we will catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.